This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell. Joining me today are the Toledo Symphony's president and CEO, Zach Vassar, principal second violin and artistic administrator, Merwin Sue, and we have a couple of special guests today. Returning is our WGTE intern, Mercedes Diaz, and we're also joined by a Toledo Symphony Lab newbie. That would be the TSO marketing manager, Allie Dresser. Hello, Allie.
Hi, Brad.
Welcome to Toledo Symphony Lab.
Good to be here.
You're enjoying it so far.
I am.
Right?
We'll put a stop to that.
Yeah. Well, we want to put it out there. We're going to toot our own horn today, and that is because this is our 50th episode, and we also recently won an award, as you may know. Does anybody want to tell us what the award is?
So the Press Club of Toledo gives away Touchstone Awards, and we were nominated for an episode we did last year to explore the music of Gustav Holst, and we had Janet Amid, famed local astrologer, to take us through his star chart, basically, yeah. And in so doing, I think we ended up having like a two-episode continued version of not only, it was an extended version of that one, but then the next week she came back to do our own star charts, which was rather unforgettable. But it was I think the most memorable episode of last year, and that's the one that took us across the finish line for the Press Club Award.
Well, it's not often that a show about the arts gets a journalism award, which this essentially is. So I think it was a big deal. So yay us! Yay! Put in a little applause there.
Well, I really do hope 50 episodes in that we've been able to do something meaningful for our listeners. And I think when we first started this Symphony Lab idea, it was with the intent of overcoming many obstacles that this industry puts upon itself, the sense that it's unapproachable, that it's difficult to have conversations about, that there are a lot of challenges to even laughing at ourselves. And I certainly feel like we laugh a lot in the studio when we're recording these. And as much fun as we have, I hope that it's enjoyable for the listeners to hear our wonderful musicians and our guest artists and our conductors come in to talk about something that means a lot to them, but also present themselves as just random, normal humans who happen to be connected by their love of music.
Yeah. Well, speaking of laughing at ourselves, let's go back and listen to a clip from one of those Janet Amid appearances. See if you...
Only if you cue that magical harp music, Brad. I love it when you do that.
See if you remember this.
But I did see genius with you. And I'm not just saying that to make you feel, but
That's what I say all the time, actually.
You have a genius. You have a very
She's
old soul
Merwin.
vibration to me. And I looked at this and I went, holy moly. I mean, you have capabilities of doing anything, teaching, directing, composing. You have all that in here.
Now wait a minute. I'm sorry, but I thought we were talking about me.
We already figured out you have stomach issues.
Okay.
Merwin's
a genius. Felicia and Zach have amazing
and
career
have
opportunities,
gas.
and I have gas.
At least it's classical gas.
And I also said that, I said that you reminded me of an engineer, which you are, you're a computer engineer, but you reminded me of somebody who, you have all that Gemini in the third house, use a lot of humor, very funny, but like I said, on the outside.
Even when you try.
Yeah, he doesn't like people knowing his business. Very much like you. You guys, you're similar that way. And it's kind of interesting, but very private. You're a good husband, though. If your wife asks me, I'll tell you you're a good husband.
Well, definitely that is edge of your seat radio right there. So since tomorrow is Thanksgiving, we are pausing and talking about some of those musical moments in our lives that have set us on our path, and we have some musical examples for that. But first, we're going to take a trip back to high school with Allie Dresser here, because the Toledo Symphony is actually giving a concert, and I believe that is happening on Sunday at 7 o'clock at Allie's High School, which is, Allie?
Oak Harbor High School.
Oak Harbor High School. Oak
Just
Harbor,
to clarify,
Ohio.
You're not currently a student there, are you?
No.
Just a year or so.
An alumna.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to start this off with a little audio quiz, right? I'm going to do an Oak Harbor High School quiz for you, Allie. So this is good for the symphony folk because they can sort of brush up on their Oak Harbor knowledge before
it's very important. We're doing the side-by-sides with the orchestras and the choirs. Yeah. It's a really big deal, and I think it's important that we have a grounding in Oak Harbor High School lore before we're there.
Yeah, okay. Well,
so I'm taking notes.
Let me address this first. Allie, you can't answer this first one, right? Because I'm sure that you'll know it. I've got 3 different fight songs here. Ooh. High school fight songs. You have to identify which one is actually Oak Harbor's fight song. Here's the first one. Okay, here's the second one.
There's a person who's saying, what are they doing in the background?
And here's the next one. Now, that's pretty hard because they all sound the same after a while.
It's not fair. I
would say all high school marching bands sound the same.
The first one sounded like carnival music.
Carnival music, yeah.
The second one sounded mysteriously like the University of Michigan fight song.
Ah, what did the third one sound like?
The actual Oak Harbor fight song. I'm going to go with number 3. I'm going to go with number 3.
Well, Allie, do you know which one it was?
I do.
Yeah, which one was it?
Number 2.
It was number 2.
You stole that from Bucky the Badger?
Bucky the Badger? How many different ways was that wrong?
This is interesting.
That's the mascot for University of Wisconsin.
This
you
is
said
interesting
Michigan.
Because
you did say Michigan.
We're just going to go back and redo all of that, please.
Why don't we just throw up Brutus the Badger and just really offend every single one of our Big Ten fan bases?
I'll just say it again. That sounded mysteriously similar to the University of... Listen, Michigan. I'll just say that sounded mysteriously similar to the University of Wisconsin fight song.
Wow. I don't know that fight song. How does it go?
Either.
On Wisconsin.
Oh, on Wisconsin, on Wisconsin.
Da, 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 da,
well, I think that was the exact same tune.
Yeah.
Was it really?
So they stole it.
Yeah.
They stole it, yeah.
Ooh.
Speaking of high schools stealing things, Allie, why don't you tell us who the mascot is?
Is that a quiz question?
Yeah. Quiz question number 1.
All right.
That's not a quiz question.
We don't have the music.
That's like a fill in the blank. This is...
You want the creepy music? You got it. Here
This
we
is
go.
very creepy.
There we go. That's our underlying music for the... It's better than the disco thing, right?
Anything is better than the disco thing.
Okay, so Allie, tell us, what are the athletic teams at Oak Harbor known as?
We are known as the Rockets.
Wow.
Seriously?
Where have I heard that
Seriously.
before?
Oh, yeah.
Also...
So we're not just stealing for the Big Ten, we're also stealing for the MAC. Good call.
Exactly.
We like to steal.
So what are the school colors?
Well, it's fitting because we are actually Christmas colors, so red and green.
Every day is Christmas at Oak Harbor. That's nice. Okay, which of these is not a sport played by Oak Harbor students? Golf, volleyball, or archery?
I'm going to have to go with C, archery.
That's right. Good job. What year was the high school established? These are going to start getting harder now. But I'll give you multiple choice. Was it 1835, 1863, or 1919?
I'm going to go with 1919.
That's right. Wow.
Seriously.
Got them all right.
Nobody has ever had a perfect score on a Toledo
Challenge.
Symphony
So you're
Lab
telling me if
quiz.
she gets one more of these correct, she gets Peter Sagal's voice on her home answering machine?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Before it was known as Oak Harbor, talking about the city now, before it was called Oak Harbor, it was known as, was it Hartford, was it Hamilton, or was it Hamden?
Can I get a repeat the question?
Before the city of Oak Harbor was known as Oak Harbor, it was called what? Hartford, Hamilton, or Hamden?
I'm going to go for Hartford.
You are right.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that was a total guess.
Okay, these last two questions are for everybody except for Allie, right?
Okay.
Questions except for Allie. What body of water is Oak Harbor situated on? Is it Sandusky Bay, is it Portage River, or is it the Maumee River? Which one of those does the city of Oak Harbor sit upon?
There are a lot of blank faces. I'm going to go with Sandusky Bay.
Nope, sorry to say, that's wrong. Any other guesses?
The other two are which?
Maumee River or the Portage River?
I'm going to go with Portage.
Yay!
I think that's the first question I've gotten correct this entire season.
Allie knew that. Boy, that music is really starting to bug me now. Let's turn it off.
I don't know. I find it really interesting because whenever somebody gets a question right, it started to sound very happy and triumphant. And whenever somebody got a question wrong, it felt really punishing. So I actually really liked the quiz music. I thought it was appropriate.
It's in the ear of the beholder.
Exactly.
Well, we can just leave it on for the rest of the show if you want. We can do it that way. One more question. Allie, if you get this, well, I know you'll get it, because I'm sure you know what the answer is. You have a perfect score. Now, let's let everybody else try and answer first,
All right,
okay?
sure.
Oak Harbor is famous for its annual what held every October? Is it an Oktoberfest? Is it the Apple Festival? Or is it the Halloween Parade? Which of those?
I'm going to go for Halloween Parade.
I'll take the Apple one.
Apple Festival.
I was there this year, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever done the Apple Run?
I have.
You have done the Apple Run?
Many years ago.
Wow.
What is the Apple Run?
I believe it's just a 5K.
It's not like you have to say, like, how far can you run with, like, 3 apples in your mouth or something?
Now, that would make it interesting, but...
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, well...
I think this is a momentous occasion. Is this the first perfect score that Toledo Symphony Lab has ever given out?
Wow.
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm just going to hit all the buttons at once and see what happens here.
It's just like any other day with you, Brad. That's great. I just want to point out that it's these special guests that we keep bringing in that are bringing up the score, because when it's just Merwin and Felicia and you and me, Brad, it's pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to compare it to a batting average. 250 is okay. 333 is pretty good. You know.
Well, we were going to talk about some of those musical moments, and I asked you all to give me some musical examples so you could talk about, how they relate to events in your life that have affected your life in music. Merwin, you want to tell us about your examples that you chose here?
Well, I think I look back at kind of some really early formative influences. My parents were not musicians at all, but they really went to a lot of great lengths to help me in terms of kind of learning to enjoy music. And I remember going to the library and picking out all these cassette tapes. So later on, I can tell Allie what a cassette tape is. But I remember one of them was that I just kept playing over and over and over again was an Itzhak Perlman Encores album, and with one particular piece that I really, really liked.
We'll sample just a little bit of it here. See if you recognize it. Do you know this tune, Mercedes?
Yeah.
So even when I was growing up in Edmonton, the farthest Canadian city from the American border, somehow I knew I was always going to be in the States. No, but it was, for some reason, that tune when I was like 5-6 years old, that was one of my favorite ones to listen to. And it actually became the first solo I did with the orchestra here.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to you, Zach. And you chose, not surprisingly, some Mahler for us. You want to tell us this story of how you came to love Mahler?
So I probably have mentioned on this show before that thinking of my inspirations and those who have really helped me to see music, when Merwin's talking about his teacher having an enormous record collection, my parents had an enormous record collection. And they opened it up to all of us. There are 9 kids in my family, and we were able to kind of use it as a lending library. But for me, I really loved classical music, perhaps more than my siblings. Those LPs that I would take up to my room and listen to were, they were like great friends. And I would kind of while away hours listening to this. So it was funny when I was a little kid, you'd probably see my record collection next to my bed, LPs with Mr. Rogers, followed by Chopin Nocturnes. So it was very much part of my childhood. But as much as it was all open, my dad was a great helper to navigate the collection, and I remember him having a wonderful introduction to the Brahms Violin Concerto, and speaking with quite a bit of reverence about the slow movement, which I found to be very special. I'd listen to when I was alone and think of him. The Tchaikovsky First Concerto with Van Cliburn, I think, was the first LP that I wore out, so that when I got a new version of it, it was like a brand new piece all over. It was so interesting. But the one thing that he had said is maybe you hold off on Mahler. So I think my love of Mahler is kind of a delayed gratification in that it was the forbidden fruit. And if I would try to sneak a listen to it, I'd put on a random symphony, and they were so long, so many LPs there, that I'd probably put on the wrong one. So I was putting it on in the middle of the third movement of the fourth symphony or something. And it would make no sense. So I was in high school and had an English teacher who was and is a great friend named Tom Harms, who had encouraged me to go to the symphony that weekend because they were performing Mahler's Third. And I was 15 or 16 years old, and I just remember thinking that, here we go. I always wanted to try out some Mahler. Andrew Massey was on the podium, and Tom had taken a bunch of guys from our yearbook committee that we were all on, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into. There was one of those weird feelings when you go into the hall and not a single second of music was going to be familiar to you, and that can be daunting. And I just remember thinking that the first movement was so long. It was longer than entire Mozart symphonies, but it was also really interesting. And that third symphony kind of moves through kind of stages from inanimate objects like rocks and, into the birds of the forest, and then all the way up to something as intangible as love in the last movement. And I just remember I had a magnificent cold, and I'm sitting there in the peristyle, and my antihistamine is probably worn off because I just remember I had tears coming down my cheeks because the music was so beautiful. And I couldn't use my nose because it was going to be too noisy if I tried. And I'm just gulping air through my throat, and my throat was closing up because I was crying. And it was this moment where I had to look up at the ceiling of the peristyle just to get away from the music because it was just pouring off the stage at me.
See, this is what your father was warning you about.
Well, he was right. I mean, if I was 6 years old and trying to tackle this, it wouldn't have been the right thing. It would not have had the effect. So I think of the finale of the Mahler 3, which is some of the most gorgeous music I think that's ever been written. And I know Merwin and I share affinity for that finale.
It's funny because we do laugh at each other a lot on this show, but this is something that I completely 100% agree with. I think this one moment when I was performing the Mahler Third Symphony with the McGill Symphony Orchestra is still one of the 5 or 10 Touchstone performances for me. Just that sense, there's this glorious, powerful, resonant D major chord, but I feel like when you do it right, the response isn't a standing ovation. The response is just this silence and this reverence afterward. And
this is just
that is the D major chord.
Yeah.
That is a D major chord. You're right.
It's the last 30 seconds of the symphony. It doesn't quite do it justice without the previous 97 minutes. But
even the previous 4 minutes, there's just this sort of like horn call that comes out of it. But I do remember when it finished, I couldn't move.
Exactly.
Everyone stood up, and I just was defeated.
That's the perfect response. Is when it's like it's totally cathartic in the sense that you're totally cleansed.
You were talking about the cautionary tale of the forbidden fruit of Mahler and being warned away from it by your parents, those crazy kids and their Mahler. It makes me think of those old films like Reefer Madness. They should have a Mahler Madness film, right? We could redo that.
But do you realize that only 4 people would go see it?
Well, there's 5 people here.
That's my point.
We might be able to attract a little bit of a crowd for Mahler Madness. I think that there's a germ of an idea there. Allie, let's talk about your pick. You talked about the John Rutter Magnificat and doing that with the Toledo Symphony at Oak Harbor High School. We're back at Oak Harbor.
Yeah, taking it back to Oak Harbor High School. One of the coolest experiences for me musically was, I believe I was a sophomore in high school, and we had a choir and a band, but we didn't have an orchestra. And so when our choir director told us that the Toledo Symphony was coming, I mean, I just lit up in excitement. I remember I studied a little bit of violin through high school and college, and
wait, what?
Yeah, actually.
How did I not know this?
So, well, I guess I'll go back a little further.
This is surprising to us because we know you as a very accomplished pianist. Okay.
Yes.
So our listeners know.
Piano was my primary instrument, but I did study violin.
Wow.
Yes. So I'm going to actually take it back a little bit further. So like Merwin said, my parents, I'm the only musical person in my family. And I can't remember where I actually, where I found classical music to be. I know my grandparents used to listen to it and a lot of Rachmaninoff recordings. And one day I was 5 years old and I told my parents, I said, I think I want to take piano lessons. And so, and my parents, so we got a small upright piano, started studying piano lessons. And I remember I would ask my parents to burn these CDs for me of tons of Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, a lot of Beethoven symphonies. And I would take my little radio into the garage and roller skate and listen to these, recordings. And that's one of my earliest memories of just falling in love with the music. And, and so growing up, now I'm in high school. And so when the Toledo Symphony was coming, I thought that was the coolest thing ever, having the orchestra there with our choir. And we were actually preparing to go to New York to sing in Carnegie Hall, John Rutter's Magnificat.
Yeah. I want to play just a little bit at the beginning. Sound familiar?
Does.
Yeah.
Too familiar.
You can sing along if you want. Or not. I like this, though. It's so happy. It's a nice little mood brightener, wouldn't you say? Little sample there of the John Rutter Magnificat. I want to mention, by the way, that I put together a Spotify playlist of all of these cuts of music, so if anybody's interested, they'll find it on our website at wgte.org/lab. We'll have a link to the playlist there. Mercedes, I know you didn't know that we were asking about this, but I'm curious. You want to... Does anything come to mind for you, any particular piece of music or particular event or person that sort of sets you on your path? We talked about education last time and your educational experience, but is there any piece of music that means something special to you?
Yeah, when they were talking about their childhood experiences, I was thinking about mine, what I could remember about my first years or even before starting to study music. And I remember this piece I loved because I heard it in a movie. I think it was The Miserables. So super sad movie, but I loved it as a kid. And I loved crying with that. So there is a part of the music that is by Albinoni, the Adagio for strings. I loved it as a kid.
Yeah.
That was my favorite thing. I could hear that for hours and hours as a little kid, crying. I don't know. Somehow I loved it.
Yeah.
And then another thing was also Baroque music. Actually, now I was thinking that I had a lot of contact with Baroque music as a kid because I was an oboist. I started as an oboist.
Yeah, you and Felicia. That's too bad we couldn't have Felicia here today. We have a little oboe.
We would have to,
oboe club.
Well, I started playing a soloist with an orchestra, the orchestra of my city, and I did Marcello. The concerto for oboe and strings by Marcello as well. Mm-hmm. So, those were the two pieces I was thinking of my childhood.
It's interesting you mentioned that Albinoni Adagio, which, was really not written by Albinoni. You know that, right? Mercedes.
There's another name on there. It's Albinoni Giusato or something like that.
Yeah, Remo Giusato, who was a musicologist who claimed to have, created this Adagio from a fragment of music by Albinoni. Now we're not, supposedly, when I say we, I mean musicological experts are not really sure that Albinoni even wrote that or whether it was a complete fabrication or not. But that doesn't, detract from the power of the music.
It's a beautiful piece. It really is. That's one of my my childhood memories too.
Yeah.
My father had a recording or 12 of that he would often play,
Yeah.
and I noticed that some would make greater use of the organ than others. But it's there are choral versions of that. There are many different adaptations of the adagio. It's really one of those pieces that has so many different layers.
The funny thing with that is that since my childhood, I never actually had any contact because, of course, I've done more romantic music, a lot of contemporary music, and not so much Baroque.
Yeah.
With the oboe, but after that, not so much.
Wow.
So
Maybe it's time to revisit it one of these days.
maybe.
Yeah. Pull out that Marcello concerto. Well, I'll offer mine, which I may have talked about this before. When I was in high school, there was a humanities
Is this when
class.
the scary guy chased you through a
No.
graveyard? No. Okay,
That's my Halloween story.
just checking.
Which folks can still listen to, by the way, by listening to the extended version of our Halloween podcast. That'll win the Touchstone Award next year, right?
If only for Emily Dietz's audible gasp at the very end.
Right. However, this is a different story. When I was in high school, we had a humanities class, and I remember a teacher played a recording of Caruso that I had never heard before. Here's a little bit. So, I mean, he was recording back in the first decade or two of the 20th century, and that voice sounds magnificent.
Yeah.
You hear, they had to use tubas for the basses because the strings did not record as well with the technology at the time. So it really touched me. And so then I went and started checking out recordings of all the tenors I could find. And then I became a tenor myself. And was able to sing in some of the same places that Caruso sang. I sang that role of Canio for Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires, which is the biggest opera house in South America. And the fact that the stage had remained unchanged since the early 1900s when Caruso sang there, it was a big significance for me, sort of coming full circle.
You figure the notes have some communion out there in the theater somehow.
I didn't sing it anywhere near as well as he did, though. I remember it was terrifying.
I remember when I first heard Caruso, I felt like, despite the very antiquated recording technology from that time, he perhaps could be accused of being the first one to go on record and really milk the note.
Yeah.
Because he would hang those suspended notes for ages, and he had the horsepower to just keep it ringing.
He was able to do it.
And when you finally resolve the chord, I mean, just even now, it was listening to that as you played it. It was stirring for that early technology to kind of bring that kind of drama into the household.
Yeah. Well, my thanks to everybody for joining us, especially to our special guests, Mercedes Diaz and Allie Dresser, and also my thanks to Zach Vassar and Merwin Siu.
Happy Thanksgiving Eve.
Yeah, Thanksgiving Eve. This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony. You can download episodes of this program as a podcast by going to our website at wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. I'm Brad Cresswell, and this has been Toledo Symphony Lab on FM 91.